In campaign 2018, local matters were focusing on Minnesota today. 2 Senate seats are up for grabs in the state, and Republicans are hoping to flip them. And there's controversy surrounding the race for Attorney General as Democratic Congressman Keith Ellison deals with lingering fallout from domestic abuse allegations that he has denied. Esme Murphy is in Minneapolis. She's a reporter and anchor for our station WCCO. Esme, always great to see you. Let's talk about Congressman Ellison. The woman accusing him said this week that the Democratic Party does not believe her. Even with that, Ellison is holding a narrow lead over Republican Doug Wardlow. How much has this scandal impacted the race for Attorney General?
There is absolutely no question that this scandal has impacted this race significantly. In the last week, Elaine, we have seen 2 polls in this race. One showed a 41-41 tie. The latest one came out just today, showing Keith Ellison with a very slim lead, 41 to 36% over Doug Wardlow. That is still within the margin of error. And if you go down and break down these polls, you can see that everyone polled has apparently heard about these allegations, and they are hurting Ellison. This was never going to be a slam dunk race for Keith Ellison. He won his 5th congressional district seat 2 years ago by 40 percentage points. This was a safe seat. He could have had it for life. Instead, he jumped into the AG's race, and it does look like these allegations from Karen Monahan, his former girlfriend, are impacting this race quite a bit.
Interesting. Well, let's move to the Senate race. Democrat Tina Smith filled the vacancy left by Senator Al Franken, who resigned amid claims of sexual misconduct. How is that race playing out?
Well, right now, if you look at an aggregate of all the polls, the average of all the polls, Senator Smith has about a 6-point lead. That is often, though, still, again, within the margin of error. So it is a small lead, but I think it can be overcome by Representative Karin Housley. She is a state senator, and she is running a very aggressive case. This is not a slam dunk for Tina Smith at all. Republicans are eyeing it, but in the latest polls, it does appear that Tina Smith does have a lead. It's one that Republicans think, though, they can overcome.
What about Senator Amy Klobuchar? Are Republicans optimistic at all about their chances of beating her?
You know, they will say that, Elaine, but let's face it. The latest poll in that race has Senator Klobuchar with a 30 percentage point lead.
Wow.
Her opponent, State Representative Jim Newberger, I think has raised about $19,000. Senator Klobuchar has millions. The last time she ran 6 years ago, she won 85 out of Minnesota's 87 counties. This is not a competitive race.
Okay, well, there is also a lot of attention being placed on the race to replace Democratic Governor Mark Dayton. What has stood out to you in that contest between Democrat Tim Walz and Republican Jeff Johnson?
Well, I think one thing that has stood out in terms of the more recent polls is that it does look like Tim Walz has got a statistically significant lead. The last poll that came out in this race showed Tim Walz with a 9-point lead. That is just outside the margin of error. However, one thing to remember with Minnesota races, and this is why they can be so unpredictable, we do have same-day voter registration here. So with all that is going on around the country, with all that is going on in Minnesota, there are 4 competitive congressional races, 4 races that are ranked as toss-ups. So those could impact the voter turnout as well. So it does look like he has a lead, one that is at this point statistically significant, but a lot can change in the final weeks of a campaign.
Well, as you know, Esme, when you look at races across the country, President Trump has been a major factor for both parties. Is that also the case in Minnesota?
Absolutely, Elaine. Donald Trump almost won Minnesota. He came within 50,000 votes of winning Minnesota 2 years ago. And he actually, in a recent rally, actually it was back in June, in Duluth, Minnesota, he said, "One more visit and I would have won Minnesota." He could possibly be right, and it does look like his appeal, especially in the rural areas of the state, is very, very strong. And the Donald Trump factor is one reason why Republicans say they are optimistic that they can prevail in 4 of these toss-up congressional races. They might prevail in a couple of them. So he is very popular, again, in the rural areas of the state, and he has had an enormous outside presence here. The Donald Trump role cannot be underestimated in Minnesota politics.
All right, fascinating to watch. Esme Murphy, thanks so much, Esme, for your time.
Absolutely.